We were caught off guard." That was the admission from a senior Google executive, not to the press, but internally in a memo that rippled through the company like an aftershock. The date was November 30th, 2022. What launched that day wasn't a product from Google. It wasn't even a product from Meta, Amazon, or Apple. It was ChatGPT, a prototype chatbot from a relatively small company called OpenAI. In just 5 days, it became the fastest-growing consumer app in history. And for the first time in 2 decades, Google, the undisputed king of search, the birthplace of modern AI research, felt like it was behind. But how? This was the company that invented the transformer, the very architecture that powers GPT, the company with the deepest bench of AI researchers, the company that had more data, more compute, and more capital than almost anyone else. And yet, it was OpenAI, a company born as a non-profit, backed by Elon Musk, then partnered with Microsoft, that captured the public imagination. That moved first. That made AI feel real. Why didn't Google get there first? And is it already too late? If you enjoy stories like this, consider subscribing. To understand why Google, with all its firepower, was caught flat-footed, we have to rewind back to 2017. That's the year Google researchers published a paper titled "Attention is All You Need." In it, they introduced a new architecture for machine learning, the transformer. It changed everything. Transformers made it possible to train language models that could understand, generate, and manipulate human language with stunning fluency. This wasn't just an academic breakthrough. It was a technological foundation. The GPT in ChatGPT literally stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. But here's the twist. Google invented it and sat on it. Not entirely, of course. They used transformers internally, integrated them into Search, Gmail, Translate. But their public-facing applications remained cautious, almost deliberately slow. Why? Partly, it was scale. Google's system served billions of users. Reliability mattered more than novelty. Partly, it was reputation. A bot saying something offensive wasn't just bad PR. It was existential. Remember Tay? Microsoft's 2016 chatbot that turned racist in less than 24 hours. Google didn't want to be next. But more than that, it was about culture. Google, by the late 2010s, had become a mature company, optimized for stability, not disruption. Teams were siloed. Decisions slowed by risk management and committee reviews. Innovation still happened, but it was cautious innovation. Ironically, Google's AI leadership may have made it more risk-averse, aware of the dangers, the biases, the societal implications, and therefore more hesitant to launch anything resembling a public-facing AI assistant. OpenAI didn't have that burden. They had something else: urgency. OpenAI began as a moonshot, not a company, but a cause. When Elon Musk and Sam Altman co-founded it in 2015, it wasn't to make money. It was to make sure that artificial intelligence, if it ever became truly powerful, would be safe, democratic, and not controlled by a single corporation. Ironically, that mission led them to do the opposite of what Google did. Where Google hesitated, OpenAI published. Where Google kept breakthroughs internal, OpenAI turned them into public demos. Where Google feared misuse, OpenAI bet on iteration. And in 2019, everything changed. OpenAI transitioned from a non-profit to a capped profit, COMPANY, a hybrid structure designed to attract investment without losing sight of its original mission. That move brought in its most important partner, Microsoft. With Microsoft's $1 billion and later over $10 billion in funding, OpenAI gained access to Azure's massive compute infrastructure. More importantly, it gained the one thing Google lacked, a launchpad. ChatGPT wasn't just a product. It was a cultural event. Suddenly, everyone from students to CEOs were typing prompts into an interface that felt like science fiction. It didn't matter that it made mistakes. It worked well enough, and it captured attention. While Google's Lambda languished in internal testing, OpenAI's GPT 3.5 was chatting with the world. It was a classic Silicon Valley maneuver. Move fast, release early, and improve in public. But what made it different was what came next. Microsoft integrated ChatGPT into Bing, into Office, into Windows. Google was no longer competing with a startup. It was competing with two giants, one lean, one loaded. And both were accelerating. Google wasn't asleep forever. By early 2023, the alarm bells had turned into boardroom fire drills. Sundar Pichai, CEO of Google and Alphabet, declared a code red. Teams were reshuffled. Priorities were reset. The result was Gemini, Google's answer to GPT. Developed by DeepMind, Gemini was more than just a chatbot. It was pitched as a multimodal, next-gen AI system, one that could outperform GPT-4 not just in benchmarks, but in reasoning. It came with promises, fewer hallucinations, more grounding, deeper logic. But launching Gemini wasn't smooth. The first iteration, Bard, stumbled. Its debut included factual errors, ironically in a promotional video meant to show off its intelligence. The market noticed. Alphabet lost $100 billion in value in a single day. Behind the scenes, insiders reported tension between Google Brain and DeepMind, two internal AI powerhouses now forced to collaborate. Merging them into a new unit called Google DeepMind was meant to solve the problem, but culture clashes lingered. One group favored openness, the other caution. Some wanted to move fast. Others remembered what happened when tech moved too fast. Even when Gemini 1.5 launched in 2024, boasting superior memory and reasoning, it arrived to a different atmosphere. The world had moved on. GPT-4 was already embedded in workflows, tools, and habits. And then came a stumble that wasn't technical, it was philosophical. In early 2025, Google quietly pulled back Gemini's image generation features after users discovered it was producing racially and historically inaccurate depictions. Critics accused it of overcorrecting for bias. Others accused it of not correcting enough. The irony was thick. A company once paralyzed by fear of controversy was now caught in it. Gemini wasn't a failure. It was, and remains, a powerful system. But it showed how even the best engineers can escape the weight of institutional inertia, and how sometimes the hardest thing to build isn't the model. It's the culture around it. By now, it's easy to frame this as a tech rivalry, a Silicon Valley drama of underdogs and giants. But the deeper story isn't just about OpenAI and Google. It's about the architecture of innovation itself. Why did Google, with all its brilliance, fall behind? Because in a world moving at the speed of code, scale can become a liability. Bureaucracy creeps in, risk aversion hardens, and the instinct to protect what is can smother what could be. OpenAI, meanwhile, operated like a startup, but thought like a research lab. It embraced public failure as a necessary step toward progress. It made AI accessible, not just to engineers, but to artists, students, writers, lawyers, anyone with a keyboard. But this agility came with a cost. OpenAI's rise has sparked intense debate over AI safety, data privacy, corporate governance, and transparency. Some of its own founders have voiced concern. Others, like Elon Musk, broke ranks entirely. The real question isn't who's winning today. It's what kind of world this competition is building. Because this race isn't just about products. It's about shaping the minds of the next generation. It's about automating language, and with it, parts of thought itself. When Microsoft embeds GPT into Word, what happens to how we write? When Gemini refines search, what happens to how we question? And when these tools get smarter, faster, and harder to detect, will we even notice the shift? Or will we just adapt, assuming it was always this way?